I've made an effort to live my life that way, but they printed terrible lies throughout the divorce. Oh, awful, cruel, like what? Ben Affleck did not meet with GQ to disparage Jennifer Lopez. He eventually said what followers had been feeling for months. On the 25th of March, 2025, their split was a more subdued mismatch between two individuals living under intolerable scrutiny rather than a single, catastrophic scandal. Although he acknowledged that the reality was more difficult to describe, he said there was no scandal, soap opera, or intrigue. What exactly was he saying about Jennifer then? The admission of the ship captain. According to the primary source, Ben Affleck knew precisely what he was getting into from day one, despite the narrative surrounding his second divorce, which typically portrays him as a victim of an unexpected event. On the 25th of March, 2025, Affleck finally addressed the public's curiosity about his romance with Jennifer Lopez in his GQ cover story. He didn't point fingers or make a spectacular admission. Rather, he illustrated the marriage's fundamental dysfunction using a metaphor. In the CNN interview, Affleck said that you don't marry a ship captain and then claim that you dislike going out on the ocean. He also said that you have to own what you know before entering any kind of relationship. Put simply, he acknowledged that he wasn't taken aback by her enormous notoriety. It was his choice. The tabloids totally disregarded the revelation, which demonstrates a profound degree of self-awareness. Affleck was admitting the main source of conflict in his marriage. While Lopez runs a multinational entertainment business, he likes a peaceful, private existence. Even before they went down the aisle in Las Vegas, he was aware of the rules of engagement. He realized that paparazzi, ongoing media attention, and an unrelenting public glare were all part of her life. Would you continue to embark on the journey if you knew your partner's life was in turmoil? Affleck did, but he ultimately acknowledged the unsettling fact that being open-minded does not guarantee long-term survival. Although he was aware of the price of her notoriety, he soon discovered that it was too deep to go. This leads us to the real mechanisms for the breakup of their union. It was a gradual awareness that understanding the cost of something differs greatly from actually paying for it daily, rather than an abrupt eruption. Affleck's metaphor of the ship captain demonstrates that neither a sudden dramatic rupture nor a covert treachery was the cause of the breakup. It was a deliberate revelation that two individuals may have a profound love for one another while having completely different worldviews. He made an effort to adjust to the wide sea, but he was always drawn back toward dry land by his innate nature. Celebrity breakups are frequently perceived as tumultuous storms of conceit, but this was a subdued surrender to truth. Since Affleck made it clear that there was no soap opera, all of the drama was internal. He was essentially depleted by the weariness of a man attempting to maintain an environment. He blamed himself for believing he could manage the journey, not Lopez for being the captain. The entire conversation seems more like a post-mortem on expectations than an exposé. The romantic delusion that unadulterated purpose can withstand an ongoing media assault is instantly shattered by this understanding. While love may blossom in secret, a marriage needs to endure in public, and the strain proved to be fatal. The revelation about his temperament is only half the tale. By taking a step back, he chose sanity above the performance of being a celebrity spouse. This realization appears to have been gradual, based on the divided time frame. In reality, Ben had to acknowledge that Jennifer Lopez's decision to terminate it in court on that particular date was the pivotal moment. What did August 20th mean? The message on the anniversary. The Bennifer saga's most horrific revelation wasn't made during an interview. It was written in an August 20th court document. The documents Jennifer Lopez filed to dissolve her marriage to Ben Affleck conveyed an indisputable message when she entered the Los Angeles County Superior Court. Variety has revealed that Lopez filed for divorce on the 20th of August, 2024, exactly 2 years after their extravagant traditional wedding ceremony in Georgia. A legal assistant did not choose this Tuesday at random. The date was chosen as a deliberate public acknowledgement that the Hollywood fairy tale had formally crumbled into a long-term departure strategy. You have to look at the documentation itself to see how intentional this chronology was. Their formal separation date is listed in court filings as the 26th of April, 2024. This indicates that before anybody filed a single piece of paperwork, the relationship had already been declared legally dead for over 4 months. Lopez withheld that knowledge for the whole summer, allowing the media to conjecture until their anniversary's precise date. In doing so, she transformed a routine court document into a conclusive declaration. Do you consider it a coincidence or a last-ditch effort to file for divorce on your wedding anniversary? It was like the last curtain call for a show that had run out of steam. This decision is made even clearer by the difference between their beginning and their finish. The pair first eloped on the 16th of July, 2022, in a quick and optimistic Las Vegas wedding. According to Clark County records, which NBC News reported, the Georgia ceremony a month later was the big public show, but that first midnight run was impromptu and private. Lopez effectively destroyed the public perception of their reunion by focusing on the anniversary of that second wedding. The court documents showed that there was no prenuptial agreement in existence, which increased the stress. Without a prenuptial agreement, everything of the money they made during their brief marriage, from her enormous brand alliances to his production business deals, was abruptly divided. They both sincerely believed in the second chance story when they first started, as seen by their failure to safeguard the financial stakes. They eschewed the safety nets that most Hollywood couples depend on in favor of going all out. However, the escape was handled just when the truth of their incompatibility sank in. The anniversary filing did more than simply request a divorce from the judge. The public was informed that Bennifer 2 was no longer a possibility. It was a chilly, planned farewell that perfectly reflected the scope of their well-reported infatuation. This judicial wrangling was the final admission that nostalgia is insufficient to mend the fundamental fissures of maturity. The weight of everyday difficulties and competing lifestyles destroyed the idealistic notion that love overcomes all obstacles. By picking that particular date, she took back control of the story and made sure the anniversary would no longer represent their reunion, but rather the day the illusion came to an end. Although Ben wasn't the first to break, his ship captain's statement clarifies his position. Jennifer Lopez shared a candid description of what occurred when the ship ultimately sank 5 months prior to his interview with GQ. Jennifer Lopez acknowledged that the breakup wasn't only painful months before Ben talked to GQ. She lost all sense of reality as a result. The world first witnessed the collateral harm of the split from the person who experienced it on the 9th of October, 2024, when her profile appeared in Interview magazine. Lopez delivered a shockingly unvarnished confession to comedian Nikki Glazer without the customary PR filters. In a thorough story published by Today, Lopez claimed unequivocally that the summer of her separation was the toughest period of her life and that her entire world blew apart. This was not a well-thought-out corporate news release. It was an instinctive acknowledgement that her foundation had been totally upended by the unexpected end of her marriage. Ben's use of the ship captain metaphor months later is made possible by this public reckoning. Lopez was the one left navigating the immediate explosion radius, even if Affleck finally presented the separation as a rational insight about incompatible lives. As the media examined every aspect of her personal life, she was compelled to face the hard truth of the public failure. She described in the interview how the breakdown of the relationship sent her into a time of profound introspection. The pop diva made a significant psychological shift when she acknowledged that she didn't need anybody else to be happy. She made it clear to Glazer that she wasn't seeking anybody, indicating that she had completely shut down her romantic life in order to protect herself. The contrast between their public disclosures highlights the stark emotional differences in how they handled the divorce. When Ben finally talked to the media, he was forced to acknowledge his part in that explosion when Lopez first acknowledged the emotional destruction. Lopez had already completed the arduous emotional lifting necessary to reconstruct her life by the time Affleck sat down with his interviewers to express his uneasiness with the open water of her celebrity existence. She had previously dealt with the loss, endured the humiliation in front of others, and emerged feeling more self-reliant. Is it possible to discover who you are only when the person you believe to be the one acknowledges that they are incapable of managing your world? By transforming a public tragedy into a personal redemption, Lopez demonstrated that it most definitely is. The tabloid notion that the couple was embroiled in a vicious, spiteful verbal battle is debunked by this time frame. Rather, it shows two people dealing with a huge setback at quite different rates. While Affleck needed the space of a new year to express his cooperation in the breakdown, Lopez experienced the instant, devastating shockwaves of the separation in the summer and fall. His revelation was about acknowledging his own limitations, but hers was about surviving and regaining her own identity. The same tragedy was interpreted in two distinct ways. The real tragedy of Bennifer 2 is that the enormous cinematic scope of their romance, the same thing that pulled them back together, is precisely what made the repercussions so terrible for her. When you establish a connection in front of everyone, it also collapses in front of everyone. Lopez had to discover the hard way that if the core structure of the relationship is unaltered, a second opportunity does not ensure a different conclusion. He acknowledged that he couldn't manage the water in March, and she experienced the explosion in October. It sounds like a bridge has been permanently destroyed by fire. However, Ben Affleck made a public appearance a few weeks following his GQ admission and made a statement that entirely turned the betrayal narrative on its head. Was it a novel kind of admittance or a lie? The amazing admittance. Ben Affleck acknowledged she was still amazing while standing on a red carpet, just 3 weeks after he said he couldn't stomach being married to a ship captain. When the actor eventually appeared at his first significant industry event following the interview, the audience anticipated a heated confrontation or icy silence. Instead, Affleck totally surprised the media during the advertising blitz for The Accountant, which is scheduled to debut in April 2025. According to a Yahoo Entertainment red carpet article, Affleck moved away from the legal details and made it clear that Jennifer Lopez is amazing. He also said that she is kind to his children and continues to have a wonderful relationship with them. His earlier remarks were not contradicted by this unexpected friendliness. It was the puzzle piece that was lacking. The complicated reality of their well-publicized split is shown by this red carpet appreciation. Affleck was neither acknowledging his hatred of his ex-wife nor retracting the fundamental problems that caused them to fall apart. He was acknowledging that although he loves her, he just can't deal with the exaggerated character that surrounds her. With all 5 of their mixed family's children there to support the initiative, the event itself acted as a visual representation of this delicate balance. The family demonstrated that their personal ties had not been severed by the divorce by arriving together. The typical Hollywood post-mortem was essentially turned upside down by this red carpet story. He demonstrated that a failing marriage does not necessitate the complete disintegration of a family ecosystem by opting for respect over accusation. It calls for maturity, rigorous boundary enforcement, and a complete refusal to provide tabloids with new material. Finally, Affleck acknowledges that he can appreciate Jillow's show as long as he isn't trapped in the thick of it. The whole story of their breakup is altered by the contrast he established between Lopez the stepmother and Lopez the international celebrity. It reframes the interaction into something a lot more adult, shifting the debate away from the typical tabloid stereotypes of betrayal and resentment. After acknowledging that you couldn't live with an ex-spectacular, can you really call them spectacular? Affleck showed that you can, if you have the self-awareness to distinguish between the persifling meteor surroundings. He understood that the marital discord that led them to Los Angeles County Superior Court was very different from her influence on his kids' lives. The first quote was an intentional attempt to shield that family from the continuous circus in the media. This public demonstration of elegance successfully redefines what constitutes a successful Hollywood conclusion. The shift to a protective co-parenting style was successful despite the marriage's failure. It depicted an actor who, after months of severe public scrutiny, had finally regained his feet, respecting his ex-partner but upholding his own limits. He didn't have to make fun of her to defend ending the relationship. Affleck completely disarmed the clickbait machine by openly thanking her while maintaining his position on their separation. By declining to portray her as the antagonist or play the villain, he took the edge off the rumors. What should have been a confrontational press junket was transformed into a celebration of family resiliency, making it a master class in contemporary celebrity damage management. In order to safeguard the children, he set a clear boundary between the private family and the public marriage. This public acclaim appeared to be a joyful conclusion, but a last press leak showed why Ben was so quick to show kindness. As it happens, the GQ interview was a calculated departure rather than merely a conversation. Why has Ben Affleck finally stopped discussing J.Lo? The last way out. The fact that there will be no more admissions is the most significant admission of all. For more than a year, the public witnessed an unrelenting media apparatus analyze every appearance, every court document, and every rumor that was released about Bennifer 2's demise. However, a clear line was drawn just as the clickbait business was preparing for another season of conjecture. The actor's comprehensive GQ feature was created as a final, permanent sign-off, according to an industry source who spoke to People magazine and was quoted by Hola. The insider affirmed that Affleck is now formally done discussing J.Lo and that the whole tale was about clearing the air one final time. This was a well-thought-out concluding argument, not a casual update. The strategic reasoning behind this last departure is completely evident when you examine the full evidence staircase of their split. Throughout the whole plot arc, two individuals are attempting to take back control of a narrative that was threatening to overwhelm them. First, Affleck acknowledged that his temperament wasn't designed for that degree of exposure, and that he couldn't take the open sea of her enormous worldwide limelight. Lopez acknowledged the devastating emotional blast radius of that epiphany months later, allowing the public to witness how her entire life collapsed as the dream collapsed. Lastly, both sides acknowledged on the red carpet that their 5 mixed children were the only purpose of the friendly, protective aftermath. In order to put an end to a relationship he acknowledged he was never meant to maintain, Affleck made a calculated last admission during the GQ interview. This leads us to the saga's most rooted human component. Although Affleck is staying away from the spotlight, the insider source made it apparent that he is not pleased with their failed marriage. His silence conveys neither victory nor justification. It is a subdued acknowledgement of loss in the struggle against the paparazzi and the impossibility of keeping a normal relationship within a media fishbowl. He has decided to spend all of his efforts on his children and career, rather than engaging in a futile struggle against the public narrative. In Hollywood, is it ever truly the end of the narrative to clear the air one more time? Affleck has ensured that it is in terms of official comments. This last change essentially deprives the entire ecology of the energy it needs to function. He leaves no space for more spin or contrived controversy by making it obvious that he is at peace, confirming the integrity of his ex-wife, and then firmly shutting the door behind him. The ensuing stillness is not hostile, it's just absolute. It is the deed of a guy who came to the realization that quitting a game entirely is the only way to win one that exhausts you. After leaving the ship and moving away from the ocean, he at last discovered the peaceful area he had been searching for. Jennifer Lopez said her world blew up when he left, and Ben Affleck eventually acknowledged he couldn't handle the water. The through line is evident, and the record is now complete. At last, Ben Affleck acknowledged what we had all assumed. He couldn't handle the water, but he was aware of the dangers of being married to a ship captain like Jennifer Lopez. The acknowledgement that the love was genuine but the limelight was deadly can be found in everything from the anniversary filing to the plaudits on the red carpet. Should Ben have learnt to swim, or was he correct to leave? Which Bennifer moment do you believe was the true turning point?